Hello friends, welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, so as you know, last couple days we had the house tented and fumigated for termites. That process is over. I came back this morning and they had most of the tent taken down. They weren't letting me back into the house yet, but they said in another half hour or so it should be fine. I dropped off some of the stuff I'd taken over to my parents' house, and then I had to go over and pick up the cats from the boarding place because if I kept them there past noon, I'd have to pay for another day, so I didn't want to do that. So once I got back, they were gone, and I could re-enter the house. Now, in order to fumigate in the house, I'm required to shut off the gas to the house. I don't know exactly what the reason is. It might be that the pesticide that they pump into the house is flammable and could be ignited by a pilot light. It could also be that the pesticide reduces the oxygen content in the house to the point where the pilot light might not stay lit, at which point you could have a gas leak and that could cause a fire hazard. So, you know, I'll buy into that. I'll go with it. You know, it's one of those two. But whenever you're dealing with a gas company, you're essentially dealing with a monopoly. And whenever you're dealing with a monopoly, customer service goes right out the window. So you got to give them 48 to 72 hours warning when you want to have the gas turned back on. And then the best that they'll be able to do is to give you like a 8-hour window of when they'll be here. So, you know, they told me, okay, well, we'll be out on Wednesday sometime between noon and 8 p.m. It's like, oh, great. Okay, so I got to wait here for 8 hours for them to come by. Well, it always kind of frustrates me when you have to get a professional involved in something, and then the professional comes out and they don't really know what they're doing. And that's sort of what just happened. First off, shutting off the gas is a piece of cake. It's a valve. You hit it with a crescent wrench and you're good to go. Turning on and turning off the gas is really, really easy. You come out to the gas meter, you bring a handy dandy crescent wrench with you, and you go to the valve here, right where the supply comes out of the ground from the supply. And when this little piece here is parallel to the pipe, the gas is on. If you want to turn it off, you put the valve on there, rotate it 90 degrees, and the gas is off. That's as easy as it gets. But unfortunately, I don't know if it's the state of California that does this or just the gas company flexing its monopolistic muscle, but they insist on doing that. Ridiculous, right? Well, that's where we are. Anyway, the guy comes in, he turns the valve back on, and then wants to make sure there are no leaks because everything should be off. So he sits there and he watches the meter for a while, makes sure nothing's moving, verifies that nothing's moving, and once nothing's moving, he moves into the house and begins testing all of the gas appliances. So the first thing he looks at is the water heater. He turns on the gas, everything seems to be working perfect, so we're in good shape on that. He then moves over here to where the dryer is. I'm kind of storing all my lawnmower and stuff here, but you can see there's this little valve sticking out of the wall right here. That's just the shut-off valve for the dryer, for the gas dryer. So he checks that and puts a little cap on there just to indicate that, yeah, he's checked it and everything's fine on that. Next, he comes in and checks out the range, and basically that's real simple. He just turns them all the burners on and lets them burn for a minute just to kind of purge all of the air out of the line. That worked fine too. The stove is brand new. It's about 2 years old, so it's in good shape. It works perfect, and we're good to go. So next we get to the furnace. The furnace is also gas powered, and it's a little bit old. We knew that when the housing inspector came through, and he turns it on, and everything seems to be working fine. The blower comes on. You can see the electric igniter heating up, but it doesn't go after that. No gas starts flowing, and you don't get any flame, and you don't get any heat. So he fiddles around with it. We tried a couple, turn it on and turn it off, reset it a couple times. Can't seem to get it to work. He proposes that this thing here, which is the gas valve, it's basically a switch that turns on and turns off, and when it's on, the gas flows. When it's off, the gas doesn't flow. He proposes that perhaps that switch is stuck. the fact the thing worked perfectly before we shut off the gas, that doesn't seem to weigh into it. But that's what he proposes. And he says I should call a furnace guy and get him to come out and look at that and figure out what's going on. Well, I say nuts to that. You know what? I repair most of my own stuff, and there's a reason I do that, because then I know how it's done. I make sure it's done right. And I would have done that in this case had I not been required to come in and get a professional to do this. But anyway, he signs off on everything, has the gas back on, says there's no leaks, there's no problems, except for the furnace, and he recommends I get a furnace repair guy out to deal with that. He leaves, I come in and say, okay, well, you know what? These valves here, it's usually a mechanical type switch, and if it's stuck, it can maybe be unstuck. So I turn on the furnace, get it set to go, and the blower comes on just like we know. It's a little noisy in here. After a minute or so, you start seeing the red in the back there. That's the electric igniter. And everything like that was working perfectly, but no flame was going. Needless to say, I fixed that. And it was a solution that was so simple that it makes me question the guy who came out and what he knows and how much he, how experienced he really is. Let's turn this thing off now just because it's noisy. So anyway, when I'm doing this after the guys left, I realize, okay, like I said, the possibility here is if this thing's stuck, that maybe it can be unstuck. So I fire everything up and go through that warm-up cycle I just showed you, and I just start beating on the side of the thing with my hand. Boom, fire comes on, we're good. See, this is why I prefer to deal with stuff myself, because then I know what the problem is and I can figure it out. This isn't a really complicated thing, because basically the gas comes in here, goes up this line, into here, through the valve, down here. Those are the jets right here, and it blows and the flame blows in there, and then warm air or air is blown across that, and that's how that works. So obviously that's where the valve was, and that's how easy it was to fix it. I just probably saved myself $500 or $1,000 just by using my fist. Be surprised how often your problem can be solved with your fist. So I got to admit, I'm a little disappointed with the work that the fumigators did. In terms of tinting the house and fumigating everything seems to be fine. I'm not seeing a bunch of bug carcasses, but we don't know that there was actually anything in the house. We just saw evidence that there had been termites in the house at one point. So just to play it safe, we dealt with it. But one of the issues, I was required to sign a form saying that the pesticide company is not responsible if they kill any of my plants. Now, I assumed, and that was kind of how it was pitched to me, that the whole premise of that was that sometimes the poison that they pump into the house can poison the plants and kill them. I didn't expect that the problem was going to be caused by the people who were putting on and taking off the tent themselves. But they don't really seem to have a lot of concern about taking care of plants when they're putting the tent in or taking the tent out, because they'll just sit there and they'll step on the plants, they'll throw their sandbags on top of the plants. Several of my plants are going to have to be replaced because they were just absolutely pummeled by these guys. I'm happy that this one here survived, just because the fumigation company, when they put the tarp down, the tarp was on top of that plant, and then they had a sandbag on top of that. So I figured for sure this plant was going to be dead when I got back. So I'm kind of happy that that one survived. Well, this location for a plant has had bad luck with it, because we bought two of these, like this size. I put one there and one here. This one here died, and I had to replace it with another one. And so the fact that that it looked like it was going to get pummeled and killed again, I wasn't really that wild about that. So fortunately, they didn't manage to kill that one. Really took a beating, and it wasn't because of the tent, because the tent went well behind all of that and went up and over the wall, but just because the guys who were installing it just were careless. They were trampling on the plant when they were doing their install. I don't know, I'm assuming they probably were equally careless when they removed the tent, but I'm sitting here watching this guy and he's stepping on the plant, breaking branches off. This thing was in so much better shape. You can even see some of the dead branches over there in the ground that they just left there. So I'm not really happy with them on that. This nice hydrangea that I put in, I spent like $40 on that plant. They almost uprooted that thing in the process of installing everything because they're just totally, completely careless about where they step. They don't look where they're stepping. They just, yeah, this is where I need to be, so this is where I'm going to go. See, even this one over here is kind of pummeled. It's all broken off, and so I don't know. I'm not really happy with them, so I'm going to probably have to replace those two plants. And unfortunately, since they made me sign a waiver saying they're not responsible for anything that happens, I'm going to just probably have to pay that out of my own pocket. That kind of sucks, especially when I just replaced those. On a positive note, I noticed that my honeysuckle has finally begun blooming. That was one of the selling points that the realtor had, is that this thing is just going to be covered with white and blue flowers in the next few weeks. And as I was walking by here a little bit ago, I noticed that I could smell the aroma of the flowers, but I couldn't see any of the flowers. So I started looking around a little bit to see if I could find them. After a little searching, though, it became clear that I'd found a couple flowers that have now actually opened. This is just the beginning. This thing is going to be covered with flowers, and this whole yard will smell like honeysuckles in a few days. So that's going to be a real nice welcome for the new owners. They're going to come in. This whole yard is going to smell like honeysuckle. Very nice. Okay, there have been some questions about what happened to my tortoise Flash. Flash was taken over to my parents' house a few weeks ago when we started selling the house, because normally she's behind a locked gate, but when you're selling a house, you got to have the gate. And they're having an open house. That's literally what an open house means, is everything's open. So you leave the gate open and, you know, she'll be off in a flash. That's how she got her name, by the way. So she's been staying with my parents and will probably continue to stay there through the duration of this, well after I move. And I probably won't move her out to Texas until, you know, I move into a house where, you know, she'll have a backyard that she can have free run of. So Flash is still with us. She's just hanging out at my parents for a while. So anyway, that's really all I have to report for this vlog. Appreciate, as always, you watching, and I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.